Hi, my name is David Hartful, and I'm here to talk to you about the quadrants. Today we'll be doing our practical exercise, which will focus on the recent um, financial aid misappropriation case at Howard University. So, Howard University was founded in 1867 as a historically black college. It currently has 10,000 students, and the tuition there is about $40,000 per year. 70 to 90% of the campus is on financial aid, and recently 9 financial aid officials were fired for misappropriating funds. Now, how they were doing this was they did not find a loophole in the financial aid rules that allows for a student to get his tuition waived and still get a scholarship. So essentially, students could double dip. Now, while all this is going on, Howard is the second best dressed campus in America, and they were voted the second best dressed campus by Huffington Post. And so Howard University is known for having a fashion culture, and many young people there are often dressed in really nice clothes. And one of those young people is Tyrone Hankerson Jr. Now, he graduated with honors and was one of the first people that was an undergraduate to speak at commencement. While at Howard University, he started a fashion blog called Happenings with Hank. And so this fashion blog, he featured high-end fashion like Louis Vuitton and Gucci. And he was well-known. It was a really popular blog. Now, his last year of law school, someone posted an anonymous post on Medium, and they accused him of misappropriating funds, getting $400,000 in financial aid. Now, in Tyrone Hankerson's defense, it does cost $340,000 to go there for all your undergrad years plus law school. So they've been there 7 years. He contends the clothes were given to him. They were featured on the fashion blog by various boutiques because they wanted the advertising on his popular blog. And he also says that he never had any approval authority, even though he did work at the financial aid office. So he claims he's done nothing wrong, and he currently awaits trial. But even though nothing has been proven, this is a good problem that we can use our 4 quadrants to analyze what's going wrong and what we can do to fix it. So I have made a matrix, a quadrants matrix, that details this problem that I'll put up now. Now, many people will say that fashion culture isn't uniquely a black issue, that many people of all races spend too much money and too much time on how they dress. And that's very much true. However, I will say that the consequences of not dressing well matter more for a black person than other races of people. For example, the Trayvon Martin case. Here's an example of somebody in a hoodie and t-shirt, or a hoodie and blue jeans. And when you think about it, that's a fiscally responsible way to dress. But he was still stereotyped and hunted down and killed because of the way he was dressed. So we see not dressing well could have grave consequences for a black person. Now, on the other hand, somebody white who doesn't dress well, for example, a Steve Jobs, who wore basically the same turtleneck and pants every day, or the same style of dress every day, he didn't really have any consequences for that. And if you read the book on his life, it actually says when he asked for the money, did his pitch to get the money to start Apple, he came in Eastern dress because he was into Eastern culture at the time and yoga. And he sat Indian style in a chair while he gave the pitch. On top of that, he was known for just acting erratically. He would often talk about smoking weed and doing LSD in front of important people, and no one really held him to account for that. And in the book, it even said he sometimes smelled bad because he believed in being all natural and not using artificial soaps. So, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that if a black person had done all that, they'd have been able to get the startup money to start a company like what he was doing. So, I think that fashion culture not necessarily a uniquely black problem, but it is something that black people have to worry about more than other races of people. So, to go through these quadrants, quadrant 4 is the exterior collective. So this one we're looking at the overall Howard University fashion culture. So in this culture we award privilege to those who dress better, and we criticize those who dress poorly. In the blog, the guy who was talking about Tyrone Hankerson would often talk about how Tyrone would make fun of students dressed in cheap clothing or dressed irresponsibly or not dressed well. And so the Howard University fashion culture is really just a microcosm of the better black fashion culture in general. It's because many people will talk about how black people will dress really well sometimes, and they want to know more about that. The next part we'll look at is the exterior single, or quadrant 2. And this is Tyrone Hankerson himself. You see him accumulating a lot of designer clothes. He's also critical of people that aren't dressed well. He's seeking approval for being dressed well through the blog. And he started the blog, in his words, as a service to his people because he felt like dressing well will help black people to maneuver in a world that's often difficult for us to maneuver in. Okay, quadrant 3, the interior collective. Generally, dressing well in black culture is a way to combat white supremacy. It often leads to privilege, to be able to move through certain doors that normally are closed off to you. And it could mean the difference between success and survival or failure. So if you're dressed well and people see you in a different light, they're less likely to stereotype you. You're able to move in different arenas that you normally would be kept out of. And then quadrant 1, which is the interior collectives. And I'm getting this from an interview of Tyrone Hankerson himself. He said clothes represented the access to wealth that historically black people weren't allowed to have. So dressing well was a way to put his thumb in the eye of white supremacy and give himself pride. Also, it was a part of just the Howard culture generally. So Howard culture is known for, Howard students are known for dressing well, having name brand things on. So he did it partially to fit into that elite culture that's there in Howard University. So I've made a matrix for observers. and a matrix for people that are participating in the fashion culture to reevaluate if this is something they want to continue. So for an outsider observing this fashion culture, these are the things you should think through as far as the quadrants. So in quadrant one, the interior singular, you should conduct shadow work on how you feel when someone's dressed well or dressed poorly, and analyze and see how you're judging people on the basis of how they're dressed, and are you fueling the need for people to dress really, really nicely and overcorrect to prove you wrong? Are you adding to the culture by judging people that dress poorly? And then also, if you see someone dress well or dress one way you feel like isn't well or isn't good, do you have enough facts and know their background to know if they should be doing that or not? So a lot of times you'll make these snap judgments without any facts on how the person's living, and you need to be aware of that. So now on the exterior singular, if you see yourself judging somebody, stop and realize you're making these unfounded judgments. So on the interior collective, it's good to facilitate talks at your work, your school, and your church on race and appearance. Now that doesn't have to be some formal type of talk. I mean, if the subject comes up or if someone's discussing someone of color and how they're dressed, go in a little bit deeper with the person and find out if they're judging someone on the way they're dressed. And would they have dressed differently? If they had dressed differently, would their perceptions change? And talk about different things you've heard in this video too, so you can explain to them why they could be dressed the way they're dressed. And if you see someone outright in the exterior collective, outright passing judgment, call them out on it, get them to stop doing it, and hold other people within your community accountable. So for those who see this as a problem, it's good on the interior singular to do your shadow work on why you need to dress well and how you feel when you're complimented on dress and when you're chastised on the way you're dressed. So you're aware of how much of this are you doing out of your own volition and how much of this are you doing just to impress other people. Then on the exterior singular, you should quantify how much money and time is spent on fashion. That's actually sitting down over a month and calculating how much time and money you're spending on fashion and seeing if there's a better way to use that time. List the stuff that can be done with that time and money. And recognize how you're feeling when other people are chastised or complimented on their dress. So in the interior collective, we can facilitate discussions on how people are dressed and how we feel when we're dressed well and how we feel when we're dressed poorly, and the best ways to deal with all these competing factors that we're trying to maneuver around, whether it's undoing stereotypes or building your own self-worth up, all these different conflicting parameters that we're working around. How can we come up with the best way, the most practical way to facilitate all the different things we need to do? And then the exterior collective, if someone's being judged on how they're dressed, speak up and get the people to stop judging other people on the way they're dressed. So as you can see, the quadrants helps you to break down different issues and come up with ways to constructively work through problems. Instead of pointing your finger and wagging your finger in the face of a 20-year-old for being dressed poorly or spending too much on dress, or judging a whole group of people by the way a few people are dressed, you can actually constructively look at what's going on and why people are doing the things they're doing, and understand how you are contributing to the behavior. And really, all you can do is control your own behavior. So, doing this kind of shadow work and understanding will help you not to add to the problem, and if you are part of the problem, to stop it and make those corrections. So, that's it for the practical exercise. I'll see you tomorrow, next week, with another talk on the quadrants.